Well, hey guys, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Field. I'm our Director of Product Management here at MessageGears.
And I'm Taylor Jones. I run our solutions team.
And between the two of us, we've each had more than 10 years of experience in marketing technology. And today we wanted to talk with you a little bit about how real-time data is the unsung hero of customer loyalty. And the thing about customer loyalty is that it's changed a lot over the years. I think about when I was younger, my mom was really dedicated to a certain brand of English muffin. And so literally, if they didn't have it at the first store that we were at, we were going to drive to store after store after store until they had.
That's a good way to work up an appetite as you're looking for it.
It is, and the problem is that the English muffin was an appetizer, and so now you're doubly in trouble because you're hungry and you're hungry again.
It's funny how brands inspire that sort of loyalty. I'm a huge fan of outdoor products, and I always go to REI just because the experiences I've had have been, they've built that trust over time. So I know, A, it's a quality product, and if something goes wrong, they're there for me. They're going to help me through that issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of getting help through an issue, I became an Apple supporter for my whole life back in 2003 because I was a developer working with a laptop and I had a problem with it. The logic board fried at 10 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't going to be able to do my work. So I called them up and they're like, it's cool, just we've sent some boxes out. Sort of pre-sent out to all around the country to where do we think we're going to see problems today. So we're going to route one for you for the last mile to get it to me. But I get it there and when you do an RMA, you're expecting to wrap up your laptop in bubble wrap and throw it in some cruddy looking box. But this time it was an Apple experience. It was as beautiful. They just started the Apple stores at this point. It was beautiful as the unboxing.
The reboxing experience.
The reboxing experience was top notch. And I sent it off to them and it came back to me within 3 days. Everything worked. And the thing that I loved about that wasn't just that they met my need, but they met it in a very uniquely Apple way, where the design element was there. They were still Apple even when their stuff didn't work. And so, we definitely see examples of that today, but for a lot of industries, customer loyalty is changing, right? And so I think first about the world of e-commerce, where customer loyalty has changed a ton in the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where when you're looking for that next product, that next purchase, you can now just search for it and 1,000 vendors pop up. Various prices, different shipping, etc. So when you're thinking about loyalty, how do you inspire a customer to come back to your site or your app so that you're drawing and building that trust and loyalty? When you think about that, what makes you decide to go back to the same kind of vendor over and over? How do you build that trust in a specific brand so that you're focused on driving the customer back to your destination each time?
Absolutely. So if you have an app, you've got a leg up, right? Because they've already installed the app. They're much more likely to use the app a second time, but you have to continue to provide them that amazing experience. And for me, that amazing experience is all about, first off, it's got to be low friction.
Right.
I've got a lot of things going on. I'm not the kind of guy that just sits down and does a bunch of comparison shopping. I'm much more likely to be the guy that has 5 minutes while I'm waiting in line for something. I'm going to stock up on whatever I need.
Right.
And then it's got to show up. But for me, the other things that are important in terms about a great customer experience, it's got to be high quality and high design. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more for those kinds of experiences, but I definitely want something that's been crafted and there's a clear craftsmanship in their user experience. How about for you?
For me, it is the low friction. You want it to be accessible. For me, it's when you build the right rapport with me. So when you're making the right recommendations, when I'm on your site already looking for something, if you can be predictive, if you can know that next purchase that I'm interested in, that way you're more likely to lock me down and kind of drive me back. As you build trust in me, with me, then all of a sudden I'm much more interested in the next purchase and the next purchase and the next purchase. And if you can kind of keep that cadence and, keep me interested in it, then all of a sudden I'm coming back to your site by design rather than searching to see it and see if I can save a few dollars here or there.
Right. So for today's session, our hypothesis is that brands that build customer loyalty today are primarily successful at three things. Number one, they understand their customers. They've taken the time to watch what their customers are doing, see what they like, what they don't like, what they've bought, what they've only browsed, what they've bought multiple times, what emails they're opening, what pages they're going to on the app. Like they've really taken the time to understand all of the data about their customers. And number two, they do a really good job in talking publicly in a way that attracts their prospective customers. So one of the examples that I love to give here is actually the United States Marines. So all the branches of the military have worked very hard at recruiting for a number of years, but Marines are particularly good at talking to their own. They know the kind of message that they like to put out there, where people that are going to be successful Marines tend to resonate with that message. And they don't try to go broad with their message. They try to do what they can to specifically talk to their segment, and have that resonate with those people. So even for the Super Bowl this past year, they got a Super Bowl ad, but they didn't show the Super Bowl ad like on the general TV slot because they didn't want to sort of appeal to moms and dads, because those guys probably aren't going to become Marines. What they did was they only paid for it to go in the online streaming version of the Super Bowl, because that's where the cord cutters were, and that's where the guys that are 19 to 21, guys and gals that are going to sort of meet that unique criteria, that's where they tended to be. So they really were sort of on message and sort of hit the right channel. So you've got to talk publicly in a way that appeals to your prospective customers. But there's the third one.
Yeah, and that's trust. When you're looking at, that's a great example of reaching out to users in mass, where a specific segment, so you're reaching out to a large group of people, but you've also done a little bit of profiling to know how they fit into it. When you're thinking about someone like me, where I want to kind of build trust in a brand, or they want to build trust with me in a brand, it's about understanding each different step of my interaction with that site. So as you're going through that, you've got to live up to the promises that you're making for the brand. You've got one specific kind of theme that you're leading to. So it's all about making sure you continuously support that message, stay with the right cadence, so that you've got kind of one unified presentation that builds trust with each of those users as you go through it. And part of that is just talking to each individual in the way that they want to be talked to. So similar to that kind of larger concept, as you get to more individualized marketing, you've got to use the language that they're expecting from your brand.
Mm-hmm. And so the question is all right, so if that's what you've got to do, how do you do that? So I would tell you that I think there's three things that you have to do in order to do that well. Is number one, you have to have great creative, right? You have to have very thoughtful stuff that's put together that's really meant to talk directly to you. You have to have compelling imagery around that. You have to have good organization of the information so that people who you're interacting with can very quickly discern your messages and figure out if there's something in there for them or not. And so after you've got that great creative, you definitely need the right channel mix. So for me, if I'm getting marketing messages, I tend to want to get them in email. But at the same time, if what you're doing is having a lightning sale and I missed the email, I definitely want that push notification that comes to me and lets me know that, like, hey, for the next few hours, we're doing 50% off, so that it might be a great time to take advantage of that. But once you have those two things in place, there's still one thing that you need to really tie it all together.
You got to have the data. And I think that's the key when you think about the right content, the right creative on the right channel. It's all about having real-time access to that data so that you're working out of an individualized view for each recipient. You can't reach out to someone with the right content on the right channel at the right time if you don't have real-time access to that. So you have to have that 360-degree view of the customer to make sure you've got all of those elements combined for one right channel communication.
Mm-hmm. And so you've got that perfect 360-degree view of the customer, but is that really enough?
Yeah, it's about taking that 360-degree view of the customer and accessing it like completely at all times. So you've got to be able to say, I need to send out this communication on this channel to stay in constant concert with that chain of communications that you've got. Mm-hmm. You want one unified message so that you're not breaking the cycle of the communications you've sent before. One misstep, one kind of mistimed or ill-positioned communication can break the trust that you've worked so hard to foster and build.
That's right. So you need that real-time data. And the problem is that marketers have heard about real-time data for a long time. And a lot of times there's a lot of confusion around it. There's been a little bit of disappointment around it. What have you seen in that?
Well, I mean, it's one of those where, a lot of times you feel like you've been lied to. You'll hear real-time data on a platform, but you don't realize the complexities of moving large amounts of data. So you end up with something that's synced daily or even weekly, and you're not really real-time. You're working on a very dated snapshot of information. It's older, so it's not real time, but it's also incomplete. You don't have access to all of the other streams of data, where if you're working out of one kind of unified source of information, the same source that drives your website, your support platform, all of these different data elements, you've got to have one unified view to put that together. So, working out of that complete set in real time is the only way to really foster those communications that everybody's looking to build as they move their programs forward.
Okay, so then, guys, for today's webinar, our definition is going to be that real-time data is immediate access to the 360-degree view of the customer. It doesn't mean data that's updated every hour, every day, every week. It means that you can see the whole picture, the marketing data, the purchase data, the customer success data, like the whole thing. You get the most recent version of that data that's up to date every single time that you need to send. And Taylor, why is that difference important for today's marketers?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, again, this is all about fostering trust. You're trying to build loyalty within your brand. So it's all about making sure that the messages you send are identifying with, the overall broader communications that you've been sending each recipient. You're trying to help them understand that you know them as an individual throughout that, purchase, product, or even retention side. So as you're going through those programs, you don't want a serious misstep where all of a sudden, you're breaking a cadence, you're not making the right offer for them. So that's where having a 360-degree view of each client is essential. Where you've got a lot of things that have to come together in an orchestration. I've got my flight, my hotel. That schedule is very important to me. So if I do something where, I make a purchase, let's say I book a flight, I expect that to be complete so I can move on to the next step of that process. If you send me a communication slightly later that says, hey, don't forget to, complete your purchase because you're kind of in that abandoned cart program, then all of a sudden, it breaks that trust. I have a serious panic attack of, oh no, I've already got the hotel booked. Can I still get the flight? So it can throw a lot of, it can really break out of that happy cycle of harmony where you're fostering the right ideas for the customer. You're building that trust and loyalty. So it can be a very painful process when you have a misstep and a cadence like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's one thing when you have a misstep and it's along the purchase experience, because a lot of marketers, they're pretty tight, between their marketing data and their purchase data. Have a reasonable sync between those. But what is a little bit more rare is where marketing really has a good communication channel into the customer support data.
Yeah, that's a big thing that we've seen with clients where if you, let's say, I've got an upsell offer that I'm going to send right after you book. Well, I can't send that if there's been some sort of support issue. Maybe the client had an issue with the booking, maybe they've canceled it. So when you try to send that, that upsell or that reinforcement message on the previous purchase, if it's mistimed where there's already been another event that's changed that, that can be a very serious misstep where, it's obvious that, you're not in sync across the different communication channels. Don't try to upsell someone if they've, had a problem with their booking. That can be a serious, I'll say problem with that loyalty. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels like all of a sudden you're exposing that the marketing's not connected.
Yeah, but it's not just all about stuff going wrong when you don't have it. When you do have it, stuff can go really, really right. And so that makes me think back to, when I was a young business traveler and I was sort of first going back and forth between the US and Europe, I got upgraded to platinum like halfway through one of my trips. So I flown over to Europe. I was only there for a few days, and I got upgraded to platinum before I flew back. And so the first thing that happened is when I crossed that threshold, I knew when I was going to cross the threshold. Like within a day, I got an email, and it was like, "Congratulations! You have made platinum," and it was the first time. And so as a young business, I was all jazzed about it. And I go to the airport to check into my flight home, and The woman at the desk was like, "Well, Mr. Field, congratulations! You're on being a platinum member. We'd like to upgrade you to business class." It was the first time that I had ever flown in business class, and it was just one of those signature moments that really made a difference for me and that brand.
Right. And you can definitely reinforce that when you have access to that data. Think about, they send out, often you'll get a survey after the fact that was, how was your flight? But if when they know that information and everything's in concert, then you got that, at the top of the message, congratulations on your upgrade. We hope you enjoyed that first of many. And that you can kind of use that data to reinforce that and continuously build that. So now next time when you're thinking about that next flight you're going to book, you're not as concerned about the price as much as the brand and the respect that you feel like they have for you during that.
Mm-hmm. But you can definitely go too far with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this, there's a lot of conversations now about privacy, so you've got to be very careful about how you expose this type of data that you're using to leverage it. You don't want something that ends up being creepy where, if I'm on one of these e-commerce sites and I search for something for a friend, I'm checking out a price for them, even place an order. It's one of those things where you've got to know the customer. You've got to have access to everything they've done historically, so you don't end up continuously recommending products that don't fit into their normal persona. Just because someone's got this one-time event, if you start framing the future conversations around that, it can be very creepy. That they're kind of tracking you. It doesn't feel like they know you as well, and now you're kind of thinking about, well, what else are they collecting that doesn't make sense? So being sure to know everything you can about each of those individuals at each step allows you to avoid some of those missteps where something that's not necessarily in the same frame that you normally interact with them, you can choose to ignore that information and focus on the core user that you have.
It always makes me nervous looking for gifts for my wife because I never know when they're going to pop up. When Amazon added that little ability to remove this from my search, remove that from my search, that was absolutely awesome. Because you're right, it's not defining what I normally want to see on a day-to-day basis. Just normally want to see a few times right. a year at best. Okay, so we've talked a lot about sort of where some of the problems are and what you want from a customer loyalty standpoint. So for the customers that have dialed in for us today that wanted to learn more about this, how should they just get started?
Well, I think the key is to understand where you are now. So you've got to understand your platform, you understand where your data lives, and what the challenges you're facing are. So how hard is it to get data into your current platforms? When you start using, I'll say, more of the traditional providers where it's a SaaS platform, it's a very siloed solution where you have to figure out, how do I mirror copies of my data that's in-house over to these platforms? And then the second part of that is, how do I get it back out of it? You've got to figure out where those challenges are. Our perspective is, if you work out of that single source of truth, the same source that's driving your website, your support platform, all of those different programs, you've got one place. You're not worried about, moving data. So the key is, where are the challenges you face today, and how do you figure out how to unify that so you can start marketing out of one source?
Yeah, because we work with a lot of enterprise clients, and one of the things that I hear is about the dreaded bidirectional data sync.
Sure, bidirectional, tridirectional. It's one of those things where it's, we're moving data around rather than putting it in one place. There's a reason you don't outsource your websites, because you want that view of each customer interaction to be able to drive that dynamic experience on the web. So now you think about that with all of your other outbound channels as well. You've got to have coordination. You have to have one unified source for all of those to work on. You don't want to drive an offer to someone, and then when they hit the website to convert, they're getting a different view, a different feel. You want one unified message through that. The only way to do that is to access the data where it lives in real time, rather than creating walled gardens of data, for one channel, for another channel, and all these different places, and trying to figure out how to synchronize all that.
That's right. And that's one of the things that makes Message Gears different. And that's where sort of our perspective and our bias comes in, is that we strongly believe that, especially at the enterprise level, you should be able to have, a single source of data that's all of this data from all these different systems feeds into, so that you've got that 360-degree view of the customer. And so then, whether you're running your enterprise website or your app or, any aspect of your business off of that, including marketing, everybody can be working with the same data, which gives amazing customer experiences that help drive customer loyalty. So for a number of the people that are listening today, right, they also might be in the midst of a vendor selection process. So they're thinking about what to put on the RFP. They're all bought in. They love the idea of real-time data, but they want to figure out, who's for real and who's just kind of feeding them a line. What are some things, guidance we could give them to kind of, help them with their RFPs? What kind of questions should they be asking?
Yeah, I mean, that's one where you have to think about the implementation. It's one of those things where the salesperson is going to show you a very flashy demo of, all the programs you want to see implemented. The big question there is, well, how do they have access to that data? What does it look like to come on board and start figuring out, okay, we've got our customer view in-house. How do we get a version of that that's usable out into this vendor platform? And so the key is, what does the implementation look like? How long does it take to get up and running so that we can even start working with this? So you've got to get the IT team involved. You've got to figure out, how often can we transfer data? How much data are we transferring? What does it look like when we decide there's a new piece of data that we've got to add to that process? How long does it take to get that added? What does the upkeep and just, overall complexity of supporting that solution look like? And so that's a big question that you've got to kind of, come to terms with of, we're going to be moving a lot of data. How do we figure out how to synchronize that? And then the second piece is obviously, okay, now that we've got our first program kind of designed out, how do we do this at scale? For enterprise companies, you've got a lot of data coming in from all kinds of sources. You've got to figure out, can we move it? How frequently can we move it? What are the sacrifices that we have to make when we can't move as much data as often as we want? What does it mean from our cadence? What does it mean for identifying the right mailing at the right time? So I think that's, the key for what we're looking at is, we've got a single source of data. That's what you want to be working out of so that you can put together that unified view across these. So figuring out how each of these vendors can work with that is, a big question when you're evaluating.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to kind of help sum that up, you definitely want to say what data is flowing from one system to another. And if you're a marketer and, maybe you don't know the size of your data, work with your IT folks to figure out, how many gigs need to flow and how quickly do those need to be available. And so you're figuring out how the data is going to flow. And then the other one is, what does it mean to run this at scale? Because I think that's where we've seen for a number of the customers that have transitioned to us is that it might have gone great when they were down in the hundreds of thousands, and then they grew to the low millions and it went great. But they kind of crossed a certain threshold where it's like, it's not going great anymore to have all of those silos. They're hurting me where they used to help me.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's the secondary piece of, well, what happens when I need to add a new program? I've got that piece, and I don't quite have all of the information that I need to drive that program. How long does it take? How do I get time from IT to start moving things around and scheduling that? Then you got to figure out maintenance and upkeep of those processes. So it's just a lot of, a headache of figuring out how to manage synchronizing data, both to that SaaS provider and then pulling the data back down. All of that is very important information that can be used across all of your channels. So in our view, going back to it, having one unified source of truth and acting out of that is kind of, the holy grail of working with that data.
Absolutely. And so, just a couple of stories that we've seen from customers that have come on with us. One of them was that one of our new customers had been spending 9 months with multiple statements of work, some with his own IT team, some with the vendor's IT team to try to get this certain campaign to run, just to move the data around. And eventually he was like, I can't get the data I need as fast as I need it. So he kind of gave up. And then within an afternoon of some of our solutions personnel being on site, we helped him kind of go, oh, now that we're sitting on top of the data, we can help you implement that marketing campaign. And it was up within an afternoon once he got through the stumbling block of just having the right data.
Well, it's just about removing those hurdles, right? When you have direct access to it, it's just about building the right segment, figuring out what attributes you want for personalization, and putting the campaign together. You remove all of the complexity of moving that around, trying to figure out how often it needs to be updated. If you want that campaign, I mean, that's a fantastic example of something that he struggled with for a while just because there's too many roadblocks and he can't get access to it where he needs it. So putting that together directly on the data allowed him to put it together in an afternoon and actually improve it over what he was expecting. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a great success story. And one other that I wanted to mention, because this one seems a little counterintuitive, but I'd be remiss not to mention it, is that we've seen for our clients, they actually spend less on IT than they do when they're using SaaS solutions. So kind of going back to what Taylor was talking about earlier, where you've got the multiple SaaS vendors at play, that, they may all have APIs, but that doesn't mean that they all talk together at the frequency that the marketing team needs. So now you've got IT guys having to do bidirectional and tridirectional data syncs. I hadn't heard of tridirectional. I like it. Tridirectional data syncs, and the amount of IT resources that requires to get up, to get bug fixed, to keep going is really expensive. So we've seen clients drop 50% in terms of the amount of work that they're doing without really adding value to the chain, just moving data around.
Well, I mean, that's the key. You build these complex synchronization platforms, and you've got to support them. You've got the marketing team has to come in, they've got to file a change request to get access to a new attribute or to start synchronizing data in a way that fits for two different platforms. And all of a sudden, all you're doing is building these various silos rather than keeping one system. So you don't get the data in real time, likely it's incomplete. And the key is, getting it in one single place and then acting out of it directly rather than trying to build these bridges to it.
Awesome. So we've already had some questions that have started to come in, but for those of you that are still listening, if there's some questions that have been rolling around in your mind, now is a great time to put them in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them. But one of the ones that's already come in is, for somebody that's on here that's saying, okay, I'm bought in, but now I need to start making the case to my boss and the C-suite in terms of why we need to move towards real-time data. What would we recommend in terms of helping them build a case to the C-suite?
Sure. I mean, one of the questions you should ask that we've just been talking about is what's the complexity to manage these projects as you build them out. You've got to maintain that over time. But I think the more important question is, what do we want to see out of the platform? What are we not able to do because of the limitations of the data that we have access to, how quickly it gets there? Everybody's looking to improve their loyalty campaigns. Everybody's moving towards more continuous optimization. You want to be able to move away from a daily campaign, and you want to start hitting customers when they expect the message with the right content. And again, just focusing on the real-time access to that data. So the key is looking at, when you're trying to make a case to someone like that, what do you have access to now? What do you need access to start putting together the programs you really want to power? And that's the case that I would put together, because it's showing a movement forward and consistent progression rather than focusing on where we are.
Absolutely. And so we've got one more that's come in. So all this is great for today, but how do we see it progressing in the future?
Well, I mean, it's just about a more individualized experience rather than your weekly, your monthly newsletter it shows up in your inbox. And, don't get me wrong, it reinforces the brand. It's good to stay in front of a user like that. But at the same time, you want something that's timely, that's relevant. Going back to our 3 points, you want the right content on the right channel at the right time based on what you know about any individual user. And you can't get to that with some sort of dated information that's only synchronizing at certain rates. It's incomplete. You have to know everything about a customer at the time that they're ready for a message to make sure you're hitting them when they expect it.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I think about the future, I think it's a much more concierge experience where it is someone who is individually invested in wanting to make me successful or make me enjoy what's going on. And so as enterprises get more and more data, they're going to be able to do that better and better. I think it's really going to separate the field of who is still treating people like a big bulk of customers versus who is able to provide that concierge-like experience at scale. All right. Well, let's take a minute and wrap up. So today we talked a little bit about how customer loyalty is definitely changing and is going to continue to evolve over the next few years. We talked about today, it's really about an individualized approach to understanding the customer, being able to publicly communicate with people that you think your brand is going to resonate with, and it's about building trust and continuing to reinforce the promise of the brand. And in order to do that, the best way to get started is to evaluate your data flow. Where are your bottlenecks? Where does data flow easily? And if this is interesting to you and you've had it with your current vendors and your current bottlenecks, we would love to get a chance to talk with you. We are definitely ready to put our money where our mouth is. We've gone in and done a number of proof of concepts with companies before, and we've said, give us your toughest programs, the ones that you've heard so far you can't do because the data is just too hard to do. Those are the ones that we love to come in and shine on. So We're going to be at a few events upcoming. We're going to be at New Orleans next week at the annual Email Evolution Conference. On Wednesday, April 18th, we're going to be hosting an email marketing meetup right here in Atlanta, and would love to see you guys come out for that. And then April 22nd and 25th, we will be in beautiful Captiva Island, Florida for Media Post Email Insider Summit. You can learn about these and more events on messagegears.com. Thank you guys so much for your time today. We really had a good time talking through customer loyalty. From John, this is Taylor. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.